So you say you guys had a chance to watch this video, and I'm pretty sure you guys are going to critique this video, and I'm excited to hear what you guys say because Paulogia, he has a very popular YouTube channel, and Mike Dillahunty, he's a very popular atheist, and they have a really large following, as you both probably know already. And it's important for us to be able to give evidence for the resurrection. So, and because the resurrection is the epicenter of the Christian faith, that is what our faith is founded on. So, I'm gonna start this video and let me know when you guys want to stop, and we'll go at it like that. All right.
Perfect call for Paul. So here you go, Paul. Welcome, Jacob.
Hey, Jacob.
Hi there, Matt. Thank you for taking my call. It's good to speak to you too. Yeah, so if you don't mind, the reason why is because I've been told, I'm not going to beat about the bush. I've been told that Jesus' 10 out of the 12 disciples died when they'd seen Jesus rise from the dead. Now I'm thinking if someone's willing to die for something that they've seen, then it should give us a clear proof of the story, because Nero mentions Peter dying for what he saw, and
So
I think Nero mentioned Paul as well.
So Jacob, yeah. So I recently had a conversation on Unbelievable with Sean McDowell, who did his entire doctrinal dissertation on this. Do you know who Sean McDowell is, or his father, Josh McDowell?
No, but
okay. So Josh McDowell, he wrote Evidence That Demands a Verdict, and he's very, very well known. And his son Sean did his doctrinal dissertation, probably the biggest doctrinal dissertation on the fate of the martyrs, fate of the apostles that exists. Now, in Sean's own words...
let me just clarify a couple. I would say of the 12, meaning the original apostles, I would say Peter and then James, the son of Zebedee. We have high or very high probability they died, historically speaking. In the group that I studied, but outside the 12, I would include James, not the son of Alphaeus, but James, the brother of Jesus, and Paul in the highest level of probability. Now, on some level, more probable than not, I might put Andrew and Thomas, and the rest are just, I think, inconclusive. So whether that's less than half, it really doesn't matter for my case. I don't think we can historically assess those traditions with any degree of confidence. But I'm not willing to concede that only Peter and Paul have a sincerity that can be established here. That's not something I'm willing to concede.
Only 2 of the 12, you had this exactly flipped. There is good evidence for only 2 of the 12, Peter and James, son of Zebedee. Those are the only 2 that we can have any level of confidence that what we know in history isn't just legend. In Sean's own words, he doesn't know where legend ends and where truth begins for 10 of the 12 apostles. So
now, is that true? I don't know, Dr. Mike Licona, if you want to speak to that a little bit. Is that true with Paulogia saying that there's really only 2 disciples that we can, I guess, historically verify that was actually, I guess, were martyrs or died for the faith? Is that absolutely true when it concerns this subject matter?
I suppose it depends what you mean by verify. Because, in historical investigation, we talk in terms of degrees of probability. For Peter, it's pretty certain. We've got a lot of evidence that Peter was martyred for his faith. You have it for Paul. You've got it for James, the brother of Jesus. For me, those are the 3 biggies right there. The rest of them, we do have some evidence. Some of it is late. And so when we talk about, we can be certain of some. I think for Paul, Peter, and James, the brother of Jesus. I think Sean has a couple of more than that. I was the external reader for his doctoral dissertation. He did an excellent job. We have some evidence for some of the others. It's just not as good as it is. So for me, as a historian, I would say for Paul, Peter, and James, the brother of Jesus, yeah, we can be certain that they died as martyrs. The rest of them, I think what's important is to say that we've got enough evidence to be sure that they were willing to suffer and die for their beliefs. And it's important because you don't die necessarily for something you believe is false. Well, you might have one or maybe 2, but not all of them are going to be willing to suffer continuously and die for something they know is false.
Gary, do you have any input there or any thoughts at this portion?
Yeah, the first time I heard this, I really object to the comment of, quote, any degree of confidence. To me, that means the rest are improbable. In other words, no level of probability that Mike just alluded to. And I think the question from the beginning was skewed because, now, in all fairness, the caller asked about the 12 disciples, but then he said Peter and Paul. Paulogia, I think he should have put the best foot out here and realized that the fellow was asking him about the apostles. There, besides the 12 disciples, Paul and James are both called apostles. The best evidence, as Mike just indicated, is for Peter, for Paul, for James, the brother of Jesus, and for now here's Sean McDowell that they're talking about, and Paulogia does not bring up Paul and James till it's pushed. Now he says James is Zebedee, and Sean does say that, but there's another one. So you've got Peter, James the son of Zebedee, but then the caller asks about Paul, and he's trying to answer the question for the 12. If he were a little bit fairer with the question, he would say that according to Sean, you have good evidence for the 2 James, Paul, Peter, and then Sean says probable evidence to different levels for Thomas and Andrew. Now that list is getting a little bit longer than to say, oh, 2 and 2 only, ask Sean, 2 and 2 only. Well, turn to chapter 19, Paul's conclusion, and Paulogia goes on and says, hey, and all apologists want to back off and say, willing to die. Yeah, well, but Sean was straightforward. Well, he should have read 2 more lines, because Sean McDowell says, again, Peter, James, the son of Zebedee, James, the brother of Jesus, Paul, he says excellent evidence. Then he says Thomas and Andrew, and then just a couple lines below that he says, and the strong evidence here is for the willingness of all of them. Now, Logia jumps on that, and he says, oh, yeah, what's willing to die? How do we know? Well, you know what? When people say, how do you read a man's mind? How do you know he's willing to die? I don't judge by what I think is in the man's mind. I judge by his feet. And when you go into a city several times and you've been beaten up, stoned, left for dead, beaten several times over, Paul gives a list of how many times he got 40 lashes minus 1. When that happens, guess what? You go back in the city, you're willing to die. He compares this to a criminal a little bit later. He said, criminals are willing to die, but they take it on the chin to make another robbery or something, is what he's implying. These guys had been beaten up. And of course, as Mike's already pointed out, the big 4 Christians, 3 of the 4, Sean says we have excellent evidence. I think it was really playing fast and loose with that fact. If you're going to cite Sean.
Jacob in the UK is calling in specifically to prove the resurrection. And
sorry about that, Doctor. What was the last thing you said?
No, that's okay. I was just saying I think there's a little playing fast and loose here with Sean. If you want to say how many of the 12, you cut your answer down. But nobody's going to put down, not even Bart Ehrman is going to put down James, the brother of Jesus, and Paul, the apostle, or the apostle James, the brother of Jesus. And we have great first century data for the martyrdoms of both James, Paul, and Peter. But if you're going to say, oh, no, 2, ask Sean yourself, 2, well, then you ask Sean. You do his reading, and you go down a couple lines, and he's going to say the big thing here is willingness. So I just think we're off on the wrong foot here because there's a total misconstrual of what Sean McDowell is saying. But he wants to cite Sean as if Sean's on his side. This isn't what you do to scholarship if you want to come across. If the listeners don't know he's misquoting him, so be it. But people who know, he shouldn't get away with this.